Hi. So, last week was maybe a bit personal, and this week is probably a more typical episode of my stream. I'm Euphoria Fish. I am a screenwriter, director, producer, actor, AD for independent films on the Middle Coast. And this week, I wanted to talk about the film Love and Monsters, because I watched it with my family last week, and I think my brother and I saw a totally different movie. Not that he saw a good movie and I saw a bad movie, but we just totally saw different movies. I'd like to first give a spoiler alert that when I review films, I like to spoil the heck out of them. So if you just came for the video games, you can skip ahead 20 minutes to video games. Or if you just want to avoid film spoilers, it's probably about 20 minutes. Maybe only 10, maybe 20 for me to talk about this movie. But I like to review not based on whether I was entertained or not, but based on why people make the creative choices that they make or how I read their creative choices. I don't really think I know what the producers wanted out of this movie, but I always like figuring out what it means to me and like whether I want to do things the same way or make films differently in the future. And I don't think I'm the target audience for Love and Monsters, really, but my brother totally was. It follows video game logic throughout, and there's always something good about most movies I see. There's like one thing. If I'm not totally 100% entertained, there's still one part of the film that works. The saddest case is when the part of the film that works is just the editing. I think when I took intro to film in college, we watched The Killer, the early John Woo action movie, and The Killer was fascinating because I didn't know that I could like a movie just for editing. But The Killer is also pretty much the only film I've ever loved just for the editing. A little bit for like wardrobe symbolism, how they use black and white as a motif. It's like the action movie for people who can't read action movies so good. So I got a boost by them saying the good guys wear white and the bad guys wear black. And then the blood is the red that fills in the third color and makes it actually a color scheme. And then there were the John Woo doves that are meaningful in everything that he makes, like hope for peace in the middle of a fight, or just the collateral damage. Innocent people are killed when there's violence in a community. Let me see. Also in that film, there was the dragon boat scene and like a shooting in a dragon boat race that was exciting tension. So I'm not saying I never like movies just for editing or effects, but it's pretty rare. It's just John Woo's The Killer that I studied for class and watched like 3 times and wrote a paper on to show that I could read a John Woo movie and could read an action movie. In the case of Love and Monsters, I think it got an award nomination for the visual effects, and the computer animation is what rules this movie. It runs on video game logic, and the monsters are very impressive. So, like, if you're just watching for a world to travel through, it definitely presents the monsters. And the monsters look real. There's a new level of real to monsters in computer animation that I've only noticed this past year or so. Like, the texturing has gotten super impressive, and the rigging for computer monsters makes them just feel real. I can believe I'm not I'm not judging where are the shadows anymore. I'm not saying that they look plasticky. I totally believed in the monsters in this movie, that they had a gravity and a wetness and like just a weight and reality to them. And then there's like a 3D graphics demo rubber duck in the middle of the forest. And that's where my suspension of disbelief was like stretched the most, unto the point of maybe breaking, was when there's a fight with a giant centipede and I stopped caring about the action so much to wonder how this duck got into the woods. And the whole thing runs on video game logic for the plot and getting from place to place, and then the animator logic of the stuff in the background. All the environments are super well textured and believable, but you kind of wonder, once he gets out of the suburbs, how did a rubber duck get into the middle of the woods? Everyone's American. I might believe a concrete duck in the jungle of like either Finland or Russia, but I think everyone's American here. Anyway, I think my brother's the perfect audience for this movie because he runs on video game logic. And probably the roots go all the way back to Final Fantasy VIII and Resident Evil. He always loves a sensitive male character who's trying to figure out his emotions and is looking for love, but feels like he can't have it. Like, my brother has a really deep Final Fantasy VIII fixation. I didn't stay stay to the end with it like he did, because I felt like, oh, I can read people and I know what I want out of dating, and I don't need video game characters to simulate dating for me anymore. Not that my brother had any trouble in high school either, he did okay. But he identified more with Squall in Final Fantasy VIII. And as to Resident Evil, he stayed with those games better than me. He likes cop stories and action stories better than I do too. But there's always like a male gaze on these stories, and I'm always looking for more empowered women, and Renoa seemed kind of spoiled to me and not real. There's Japanese feminism somewhere, but I don't think Renoa has it. And there's too much needing a man to take care of her. In the case of Love and Monsters, like there were two movies according to whether you could identify with the main character and want to be him, or whether you see what everyone else in his world sees. That he, for his identity, needs to believe himself to be the strongest capable leader in this world, and has done absolutely nothing to earn the prestige or the leadership position. I think he comes across as having an antisocial personality mixed with a narcissism in his brain chemistry, and like he needs to believe in himself, but he can't read other people at all, so he keeps going through this world trying to survive and missing the cues from everyone else that he is not really good at protecting himself and is not the best person to lead. Routinely, women and children show up and save him, which is kind of nice. There are some empowered women in this movie. I particularly like the child Minnow, who shows up and points out he doesn't know what he's doing at all. It's also interesting, Minnow seems to be given the adult male director and producer's perspective and just says what the director wants to say to Joel, the main character in the movie. and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he'll be lucky to last a week in this world with all these monsters that are like radioactive, enhanced, average bugs, centipedes, and ants in the suburbs. I hope that it's good for kid actors like the girl who played Minnow to be given like the empowerment and overly confident speech of the adult male director on the film. It seems like a little bit awkward and off, but she rose to those lines and performed them really well. I hope that she goes on to get a bigger movie with more time for her, where her character is respected and used properly and not just subbed for the adult men making the movie to deliver their jokes, and can have jokes that are truer for her. But it is funny to have a kid show up and save the teenager or young adult who comes across as the less experienced person. And then, like, questing through this movie, he finally comes to Cap, who is in the same community as the girlfriend he was pursuing, who's really not that into him. And I thought Cap was pretty good. He comes across as the guy who actually knows how to survive in this world and gets people to believe that he deserves his leadership position. And he's like harnessed one of the monsters and has control over it, which to the hero makes him a bad guy, because he doesn't just kill the monsters but enslaves them and uses them to control his survivor cult, which I guess is maybe a cult. He does like send poison berries to the challenging Joel Dawson, new cult leader rival, because he wants to take over anything that he comes across, despite having not like paid his dues with the community. Hi Jedi Superpunk. I'm talking about Love and Monsters. I don't know if you've seen it. I may be spoilering the heck out of it. I was just talking about the point at which Joel Dawson, the hero, comes to a community of survivors who actually know what they're doing and wants to compete with their current leader, even though he has done nothing to prove that he is good at killing monsters. He didn't even present any like horns or fangs or trophies or anything. But we're supposed to believe he's the main character, he knows what he's doing, and in the final battle he actually finds some empathy with the crab monster. And at one moment delivers the sort of proof that I was looking for, that maybe he has learned something in this world. And then it goes totally to his head, and the denouement of this movie is that he has reached God mode and gets to write the player's guide because he showed everyone he could defeat one monster. And maybe he had 2 total in the movie, and 1 drug trip on poison leeches. I also really liked robot character Mavis, who is a robot head on a decapitated human woman, powered by an AI who even then knows more about relationships than Joel does, and how to perceive the jellyfish. They're just like floating jellyfish in this world. I liked figuring out how this would work, because there's no water to like spread the jellyfish mass out. It's a gas-powered jellyfish floating in space, and it's really pretty if you believe in video game logic, and it's holograms of jellyfish, but I think they want us to believe they're real jellyfish floating through the air, so I thought maybe they're inflatable gas-powered jellyfish. And there's still varying degrees of you probably don't want to touch that, but it's one pretty visual around like woman telling him that she actually knows more about relationships than he does probably. It also annoyed me that they named the dog Boy. So I wonder, is this Joel's proof that he's supposed to be a parent, or just that the dog remains subservient, although the dog saves him, and then the dog's the hero in the fight because he wakes up the girlfriend, Amy, to try to convince her that Cap is not actually the capable leader and is in fact the villain. I totally missed the point at which Cap sent poison berries, but think it probably runs on like rival dueling cult leader logic that neither one of them is totally the dominant leader, but Cap seems is presenting the presence that the group wants, and Joel thinks he should be the leader but presented no proof at all. Anyway, it all runs on video game and Gamergate logic, and it got an award nomination for the animation of the monsters. Totally convinced me about the monsters, not so much the love. Okay, and I think I'd like to move on to video games. So let's load up Toejam Earl. And thank you to my friend Abraham Jackson for following me this week.